Welcome to episode 9 of Leading Adam. In this episode, we've got Roger Younce, the founder and administrator of Kinwell Academy. Stay tuned. The Leading Adam podcast is hosted by me, Adam Binkard. I've spent the last 10 years researching how a healthy human experience is the key to innovation and student retention in education. And now I'm taking to the mic to share what I've learned. Hear how I've defied the odds and transformed from a landscaper to a national expert in student success in less than 10 years. Not an educator? That's okay. Stay tuned for entertaining stories and practical takeaways about leading self, leading leaders, and leading culture. The Leading Adam podcast is co-hosted by Erica Crabtree, produced by Chris Spangle, and sponsored by 240 Solutions. Connect with us at 240solutions.com. And I hope you'll stay tuned because together we can change the world. Welcome to episode 9 of Leading Adam. This week, we've got a special guest who's going to be with us for 2 episodes. And in the second episode, he brings a student from the school that he operates. Unfortunately, Erica's not with us because she couldn't be here for this recording. But I'm excited to be here today with Roger Younce, who is the head administrator, founder, really, of Kinwell Academy. And we'll talk more about that. But welcome, Roger.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. It was a team of us that founded it. And so, it was good to be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that a little bit as we go through this episode. But let's talk about you. Tell us a little bit about Roger Younce. You're an educator today. Let's start here. Did you see yourself becoming a teacher?
Zero chance.
Okay.
Zero.
So tell us about you, where you were aiming, what you were aiming for, and then we'll get to how it changed.
Yeah, I thought I was going to be a pastor. So I went to Indiana Wesleyan and got my ministry degree, biblical literature. And about halfway through, I realized I did not want to be a pastor. Did some internships, and it just didn't sit well with me. I love the local church. I'm a member, go every Sunday, but I just didn't see myself working in the church. Didn't seem energizing for me. But I was too far into my degree to change it. I would have to start completely over. And so I just stuck it out and finished it and mowed grass in Indiana Wesleyan for 8 years, trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I had a blast.
That's how we met.
You're my boss then.
Yep.
And just had a blast and doing that. And looking back, I didn't realize at the time, but looking back, just learned a ton about life and leadership and relationships and things like that through that experience of working at Indiana Wesleyan, and kind of fell backwards into the school thing. I applied to help be on a tree team for a school, an alternative school, and they asked if I would run the school instead, and I thought that they were crazy and had a wrong application or something, and here we are 13 years later.
Yeah, I mean, that really is incredible. I happen to be riding shotgun for that journey, which is interesting in how we both landed there and where we jumped from. Because although we jumped from the same industry, we jumped from 2 completely different roles.
Yeah.
And that looked different for both of us. But let's talk a little bit about the school, and then let's come back and talk about your time in the grounds, because there was so much incredible stuff happening there. And I want us to talk about that because I think real leadership was being created out of that team that is relative. I know it's relative for me. I talk about it all the time today. But tell us about Kinwell Academy. And that's not what it was called in the beginning, but that's what it is now.
Yep.
That's what you're running. So kind of give us the rundown. What is Kinwell? How's it structured? How's it different than other schools? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So we're a private alternative school who partners with public schools. So most private schools compete with public schools. We are in partnership with them. Okay. So students only enroll at Kinwell through the public school with permission of the public school. And we kind of view ourselves as a safety net to the public school's alternative system. So if a student struggling in classes, struggling with discipline, they go to the school's alternative program. If they struggle there, then they call us.
Wow.
Say, we're either going to expel this kid or they're going to drop out. The other option is go to Kinwell. And so...
so you're the alternative to the alternative.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So when we meet with schools, we say we want the worst of the worst kids that you have. and we want to be an alternative to expulsion. So if you're going to expel a kid, let's meet with them first and offer Kinwell. And then that's not every case. We have teen pregnancies where a mom can't go to school full day, or they need the social environment and the emotional environment that we offer. And so they come to us. And lately, last couple of years, we've been getting a lot of students that struggle with anxiety in public schools. And so we've been a place for them as well. So we've got the bullies, we've got the bullied, we've got the socially awkward, the ones that talk too much. We've got it all.
So somebody listening right now is going, that's not going to work.
No, it shouldn't. It should be absolute chaos. We should have fights every day.
Yeah.
It should be crazy. And I kind of like the threat of that. That's fun.
But so, okay. So structurally, full days, half days, somewhere in between.
Yeah, we do half days. So they're with us for 3 hours. And we can do that because the entire 3 hours is extremely focused. There's no passing periods. There's no lunch period. You come in for 3 hours and you're grinding hard on what you're doing. Yeah. And most of our stuff is online. So they come in, they log into a computer and they're going as fast as they can on their individual subject. Okay. So we'll have a room with 10 students in it, and each student's working on something different. Okay. But we do a lot of stuff that's off the computers. We have a reading class. We've tested our students. Our average reading level is fourth grade.
Fourth grade.
Yeah, and we just work with high schoolers.
Oh, so my goodness.
Average reading level is fourth grade. We've got 2 right now that just legitimately can't read at all. And we're starting to square one with them. And that affects writing. And so most of them can't write. And so we have
communication in general.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. And so we have a reading and writing class that every student has to take. That's off the computer. We do math off the computer. We do other things like guitar and things like that.
So you're doing pull-out classes that students come together. They're all doing the same thing kind of at the same pace.
Yep.
But the majority of it is done through a learning platform. And they're progressing through their required credit base.
Yep. Yeah. Because most of our students are behind when they come to us. And so that's the only way we could see where each student can go as fast as they need to go to get caught up.
So would it be safe to say or fair to say that the students are online learners required to come to an on-site program where there's basically real human help right across the room?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're kind of browsing tutors.
Yes,
in a way.
Yes, there's 3 teachers plus myself that are on staff, and no one's like a special. We have our math guy tends to just do math all the time, but mostly, he might help a student with history. He might help a student with English as well. Our teachers are kind of well versed in all of it.
So do you have a morning session and an afternoon session?
Yep.
2 different groups.
2 different groups.
Okay. How many students? What's your max student?
Max will take us 40.
Okay. And that's intentional.
Yeah, that's intentional. We were up to 75 at one point, and that was crazy. It was chaos, and we couldn't control the culture. There was too much going on that I didn't know about. And so we've told all the public schools we're going to max out at 40, and we create a waiting list at that point.
So you're intentionally choosing to be a particular size, which is unique. I think anyone that finds success in any venture thinks that bigger must be better. Yeah. Right? If I can impact this, if I could double it, great. I've just doubled my impact. You've chosen differently. Why is that?
Just because we've understood how important the culture is. Because the draw too is every student there's a dollar sign connected with them too, right?
Sure.
Let's not hide around that.
It's a business.
It is a business, and we've always thought, man, if we get 70 kids, that's 30 more than we have now. You could do the math on how much more money we're going to have as a school. We could do a lot of things on top of pay teachers more and do whatever. But we've all agreed that by staff and our board that we want to stay at 40. We think I'd rather have a good product that I'm really proud of at 40 than have something big at 70 that's not as effective. Yeah. Because we need time to spend time with students individually. Each kid needs almost their own learning and emotional plan, and we can do that really good at 40. And we want to do that because I think if we have 40 kids, 10 are seniors, if I'm handing out 10 diplomas, I want to be really confident those 10 seniors are ready for life, not just being handed a piece of paper. Yeah. And that feels more doable at this size.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you said you would rather have a really good product, right, than a big school or, a big, a well-known name or whatever. I want to come back to that, but I think for our listeners to understand the product that when you say, I'd rather have a good product, what is the product? And we'll come back to that. I think for them to understand that, they need to understand you. And I think we then can engage in that. So let's roll back to, you were a student at Indiana Wesleyan. University. I happened to be a full-time employee at the university on the grounds team. I don't remember in what position, doesn't really matter. But you started working for the grounds team as a student.
Mm-hmm.
And then whether it was because you were enjoyable to be around or a good worker, or because we played golf together twice a week, you moved from student to full-time employee.
Yeah.
And it was kind of that where you kind of put your education on hold to say, as you described earlier, I don't know what I want to do, but I know I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And kind of went to work full-time in the grounds team. And I think for our listeners to understand why, when you define that product, why it is defined that way, I feel pretty comfortable saying that when they understand you and the experience we both had in the grounds team, I think they'll understand that side of it a little bit more. So maybe let me frame it like this for our listeners. We were both privileged to be a part of a university grounds department where we did grounds maintenance and site development and athletic field maintenance. Anything from trash to snow removal we were doing as a team. That team that was there for that period of time still has a text thread, and we still talk regularly. That's been 13 years this year.
Since we left.
We left.
Yeah.
And that team disbanded in the years after that, a few of them still there. But there was something special about what was happening there. And I think I want to talk about that in terms of, I know I've said many times, who I am and the way I lead today started there. And so I guess I would ask you, do you feel the same way in that? I mean, I say it confidently. Like what I like to say is I'm just a landscaper at heart. And it's because of how much I learned during that period. Do you, would you say the same? You think who you are as a leader, did it start in that group?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I was paying to get an education on how to be a pastor, and I feel like I learned more shoveling snow and planting trees than I did from education.
With a bunch of uneducated hillbillies.
Yeah.
Right. Honestly, there was only a few people in that group that even had a college education at the time. Now, several of them do, and I'm proud of that because I think that was part of the standard that was set.
Yep.
Right. So, when you talk about that, I mean, some of our listeners, especially our Gen X listeners, are going, well, of course, education should be hard work.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what you mean, though.
Right.
Like, you didn't learn about life by shoveling snow.
Right.
But what, when you say you're connecting that time to now, the way you lead at Kinwell, what are some things you can pull forward and say, I pulled this from there, I use it all the time?
Well, so many things. The first thing that comes to mind is all of us that were working grounds were way underpaid, right? Like we did not make a lot of money. The money was not why we kept working there.
Way underpaid. That is true.
Like we just did not make much money at all. And so that wasn't why I worked there, but yet we all stayed there for 8, 10, 12 years for a reason. It was because we just enjoyed each other. And what's funny too is the work sucked. Right. There was a lot of really hard days. 3:00 in the morning, you're shoveling snow. It's 0 degrees outside, or it's pouring down rain. We got to plant all these pine trees. We're mad at our boss, Adam, for making us do this. But, but we have to do it.
I know exactly what day you're talking about.
Yeah, so was a day.
That was terrible. That was like, 40 or 50 trees we had to plant. And I did. I said, we're doing it in the rain. Now, I want to remind everybody, I was out there too.
Yes. Yeah, you were never hiding from the work. That was
no.
And we were all saying those trees were going to die. And now 20 years later, they're still
they're beautiful,
beautiful. Not a single one is unhealthy.
Probably the hardiest thing we ever planted.
So you're right.
No, you're right. Yeah. There's something about that. Like we certainly weren't showing up to get paid. And everybody today seems to say, "Oh, I'm underpaid." No, this was legit.
Yeah.
Like, and we're talking in 2010s era. Starting wage was still just over $10 an hour. That's absurd.
Yeah,
and that was a legit reality that we were at. We were barely providing for our households, yet we showed up to work every day wanting to be there.
Yeah.
What I have my own view of what that is, but what do you think it was?
For me, it was two things. It was the growth, like the guys I was with, I admired the guys I were, because when you do that kind of work, you really know who someone is.
That's
right?
the
Like,
truth.
if you're lazy or if you're a crabby person or you complain a lot, you're going to find out in the first hour of who that person is. But this was a group of guys, for the most part, that I really wanted to be around in those difficult times. And I admired who they were as men.
Yeah.
And so that it made me inquisitive of like, I want to learn more. You know, like the first people that come to mind are you and your brother Lucas. Like, I just wanted to learn from you guys how to be a better man. I didn't have kids at the time. I was freshly married. You guys were a little ahead of me in that game. And I wanted to learn from you in that stuff. I was even younger in my faith, and I looked up to you guys spiritually, and I wanted to grow. And we were able to do that, right? We were able to shovel and talk about life at the same time. And that was really, like, I really cherish that conversation. But also, we just had a ton of fun.
A ton of fun.
Like, that's why that text thread still goes on, because we just still tell stories. And we can just say one sentence in there, and we all know exactly what we're talking about. 100%. We're all going to laugh. And like the idea of, yes, there's a hierarchy. Adam was our manager, our boss. There was things that needed to get done. We're going to grow as men, but we're going to laugh a lot while doing it. Yeah. And a lot of people think you can't have all of those things.
Right.
And those years taught me that, no, all those things are extremely important. And even like, so we were underpaid. We were trying to get student workers to work for us who were even more underpaid.
Yeah.
And the only way we got them to come back was to have a ton of fun with them, because we were asking them to do terrible jobs.
And they couldn't even do homework while they worked.
Yes.
Which they could in other jobs on campus.
Right.
Yeah, you're right about that. We had to create an environment not only that we wanted to be in, but those, because we were so dependent, 30 to 40 student workers then, that's not the case anymore, annually.
Yep.
We had to create an environment where 30 to 40 people would willingly show up and make less than minimum wage.
Yes.
And not be able to do their homework.
Yes.
And have to be out in all kinds of weather.
Yeah. You're weed eating on a 95-degree day in pants.
And yet we did it.
Yep.
I still today interact with students.
Yep.
Yourself being one of them.
Yep.
But you moved to full time.
Yep.
With students that they spent their 3 or 4 years with us, and they still talk about their experience.
Yeah.
And some of them are doing incredible things.
Yep.
You know, which is great to see.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's similar for me, a little bit different on my side of it. You know, you talked about the things I think there's so much that's learned between someone when you work hard together. And you said that, like, you learn who a person is in a hurry.
Yep.
You know, they're throwing tools there, whatever. We won't talk about that. You know who you are if you're listening. But the thing that I took away that I had to learn, and Grounds helped me learn that, and you were a big part of that, is you taught me to chill out. Like, fun and work did not belong in the same sentence. Work was work, and we can have fun. And I like to cut up and have fun, but when it was time to work, it was time to work. And I think today, and I think the teams that I've led after that have you to thank, and the one that will be unnamed, because we don't want to make his head any bigger than it already is.
Right. Right.
You guys really helped me to see that, no, this is a big part of this. Laughter is a part of us working effectively. And I wasn't putting those two together, because to me, working well and getting a job done meant being well-trained, on time, and willing to go beyond what was necessary to finish a job. But what you helped me learn, and now I understand scientifically, I'm more willing to do that when I laugh.
Yeah.
Because of the serotonin and the dopamine that's being released in my brain, all those endorphins are allowing me to say, this is enjoyable. And my brain says, repeat that activity.
Yeah.
It really is. I needed to learn it, and I did. And I think the teams that I've led after that have the Grounds team to thank for that, because you name it, we probably did it.
Yeah.
From pranks to apple fights to ping pong and basketball, Roger.
A lot of things. Yeah, we'll stop the list there.
We'll stop the list there, just in case Don's listening.
Don might be listening. He doesn't want to hear that stuff.
Yeah, and who knows what's still going on.
Yeah.
So I think it was an incredible time. You know, now and that's what Leading Adam is about. You know, Adam, which I discovered, which this last summer, so about 15 months ago, which is what prompted me to start this podcast, is I discovered that the Hebrew word for humanity is Adam, pronounced Adam. in English. When I heard that, it was like everything in my life started to make sense for the last 10 years. I've been studying the human experience. How do you normalize leadership? What is the universal approach to leading? And what I've had come to is that the universal approach to leading is understanding that before you're a father, a husband, or an administrator, you are human. And there is something in that I can lean into to say these components will win every time. And so I've been studying that and unknowingly, and then I come to find out my name literally means human or humanity, both in Hebrew. And that was a powerful moment for me. But what I've discovered over 10 years is that the fundamental base of the human experience in any situation, but at work is what I've been studying, is belonging, vulnerability, and shared purpose. So belonging in the sense that I have a community, and I believe that there's a future with that community. We're kind of talking about that a little bit with Grounds. Vulnerability in the sense that I'm psychologically safe. I can share my ideas. I can challenge ideas. You talk about that a little bit with your school. And we'll talk about that more. And then shared purpose, this shared reason for doing. Those are the elements that we really are talking about across both seasons now of Leading Adam. And I think those things are showing up at Kinwell Academy. And maybe a part of it's ignorance, but I think most of it's intentional in what you're creating for a student environment. And it's just really interesting to look back and go, kind of all started with a bunch of uneducated hillbillies working and cutting grass and shoveling snow. Right. Kind of almost proves the point that there is a universal strategy for leading. So let's talk about the jump, or 8 years you said with the Grounds team. 3 or 4 of that was a student, right? And then the other half was full time. And then you decided that you're going to start a school in the county along with a small group of others. Talk about that. I don't know that I remember. How did that start? You decided, would you hear about it on the radio? Like, how did you hear about it?
So I had got to know some Marion students, Marion High School that's here in town. So students who were expelled, I just got to know them through church and playing basketball at the church. They were coming to open gyms and got to know them through that. And I heard about, these students were expelled from school, and I heard about this alternative school coming to town that was going to be for students like the kids I'm hanging out with. And so I went to try to, get them plugged in. And there was like this town meeting where the CEO came and spoke, and I was just curious on it. So I showed up, and I had zero interest in applying or anything like that. Like, obviously I barely graduated college. I just wasn't going to be in education.
Right.
I don't like it that much. And so I show up, and the CEO talks, and I was ready to run through a wall for him. And so I just talked to him afterwards, like, I want to work here, whatever it is. And, like I said, I thought I was going to be helping out like on this tree team or something like that. And he asked me to help start the Marion campus, and said I better jump on it before he changes his mind. So, yeah.
Yeah. Mine was different because actually what prompted me was you. Because you told me you're going to go do this. That's how I heard about it. I didn't go to that meeting. I hadn't met the CEO. I went to a separate set of interviews, I believe, in Columbia City, which is northern Indiana. But so the school that we're talking about is Crossing Education Center. The CEO is Rob Staley. He's an incredible individual. So unique. And I still quote Rob regularly. And the quote that I always use is, "We don't fail. We successfully identify what doesn't work." I use that all the time because it's so perfect. Right. This man had a heart for people. He was a public administrator and started this alternative school. But when you say the tree team, like our listeners don't know, hardly anybody does, they had a business running alongside of the school that kind of allowed them to teach and help students on board in a different way. Sometimes they needed a break from the learning, so they go to the team, right? And then a lot of it was built in for credit earning and things like that. When you thought you were applying, you thought you were going to be running a tree team in central Indiana. for the school.
Yeah.
And you end up being the school administrator from not day one, but pretty close. Was it day one?
Yeah. Day one.
Yeah. Because so Miriam had a different role.
She was in charge of several campuses.
Right.
Yep.
You were in charge of the local campus.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was really Miriam Dalton who's kind of took her neck out there and told the CEO like who I am as a person and my character. And yeah, so I owe her a lot. And she saw something in me that I didn't see in myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, big kudos to her.
Yeah. Well, we started this school, the Crossing. Now, you think we didn't start a full school, but the way the Crossing's structured, you kind of do.
Mm-hmm.
You have to create your own board. You have to create your own administrative functions. Basically, the home office handled your paycheck.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it. Yeah. We recruited students. We had to structure all the learning, our classroom management, all of that had to happen at the local level. And so, like I've said multiple times that, we started a school. Yeah. And it's successful today. It's still running, although under a different name. But I think I want to talk a little bit about the process of starting, because when we hit the ground, we had 4 people. We had more employees than we had students for like the first 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I think about week 3, we had 4 and 4.
Yeah.
And you and I decided we were going to go find students to fill the classroom. Let's reminisce a little bit.
Yeah.
You remember doing that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was wild.
What did we do?
We would hop on our motorcycles and just go hit. We got a list from the school of all the dropouts.
Every dropout.
And their address.
For years.
Yeah. We were getting like 25-year-olds.
Yeah. It wasn't just that year. Yeah. It was the last 6 or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a good list. I don't remember how many were on that list.
But we'd have these addresses and we'd say, all right, let's go to this address. And we drive and go find this address. And half the time they didn't live there anymore. And it was just a wild experience of just trying to pitch this school idea to people who had given up on school.
After about, because you and I both are bold.
Yeah.
We're not afraid to go talk to people. And after about that first week in knocking on what seemed to be 100 doors with very little success, we just started rolling up to people walking down the sidewalk. Yeah. If they looked like they should be in school, we would stop and talk to them.
Yeah.
And I think I've always thought the motorcycles helped.
Probably.
Do you think it helped?
It did. It helped my confidence anyway.
Yeah. I'll never forget. I want to hear I've got 2. So I'll tell one, pause, you tell one about a visit that we had or, an encounter. Because we weren't going door to door like Mormons.
Right.
Right. You were doing yours. Yeah. We were together.
Yeah.
But you were doing your street. I was doing my street.
Yeah.
And so we were alone. So we had different encounters.
Yes.
But and the one, I remember the one distinctly pulling over this kid walking on the sidewalk. We just pulled to the curb and said, "Hey, should you be in school?" And we had a conversation with, I don't know if they started or not, I remember.
Yeah.
But I remember knocking on one door. And I could picture the house. They come to the door reluctantly. They have a conversation with me. Of course, you knock on the door and then you step off you got to try make as much room as possible. And they said some things. We got them to come. They ended up enrolling. And I don't remember the student's name. Shame on me. But it was later, probably a week or 2 later. I was always known as Mr. B. I was walking through, and I had a different role. I wasn't in the classroom every day. But I was walking through the classroom, and the student said, "Mr. B, I need to tell you something." And I'm like, "All right." And they said, "Hey, I think you get more students if you don't wear a polo to their houses." And I had a black polo on that I wore basically every day, and it was untucked.
Yeah.
I don't remember. We were wearing jeans. I have no idea. But I was wearing this black polo regularly or something similar. And I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "Well, because when you knock on the door, you look like my probation officer." They said, "Nobody wants to answer the door when the probation officer hits the door." And I never thought about it like that.
Yeah.
And I know that after that interaction, we completely changed the way we were dressing.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, well, let's be a little more normal.
Yep.
It made a big difference. That made an impact on me that I still think about on a regular basis. I wish I could remember the student's name, but I think about that on a regular basis.
Yeah.
What's one that stands out to you?
I remember James. I went and knocked on their door, and his girlfriend was in the house, and they had both dropped out, and just trying to like pitch this idea of like, what if you give school another shot? And it made me, that was like the first time I really thought like, I need to make a product here that it's like that kids want to be a part of. Like we're trying to get kids who hate school, dropped out. They've already moved on with their life.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get them to reverse, come back. Let's do this. Well, why should I do that? Yeah, that's a good question. Why should you do that? Right. And so like they're starting from the back and like working their way up. Like, yes, your life's gonna be better with a diploma. They've already had that conversation, right? The school counselors already talked about all that. We've got to sell something different. And it really made me look at the school a different way. And James stuck around and him and his girlfriend Morgan both came. And I still remember them
both.
Yeah. And we had a great time with them and they did well.
You're right. I mean, that's part of the issue, I think, for our educators listening is, would you want to be there?
Yeah.
Right. Is this a thing you would show up to voluntarily?
Yeah.
And I think that changes the way you view your classroom. And there's a lot of limitations on traditional school. And I've worked in those settings as well and found a way to overcome those.
Yeah.
It is possible within the walls of your classroom. And then there's other restrictions, of course. But yeah, one more to kind of qualify what the demographic we're talking about. And then let's talk a little bit more about the school and some of the unique things you're doing. I remember we rolled up to this house together for whatever reason. We were on the same street. I could drive you to it. And we rolled up to this house, and I thought, we had gotten into this thing. Nobody's answering the door. We roll up to the house. The windows are blown out. They're boarded up. The front door's missing, apparently. It is plywood. And I remember thinking, we should just keep going. And I knocked on this door, the door barely hanging on by the door.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a sheet of plywood. And someone answered it. And I thought, oh my God, someone lives here. I think that was a moment where it hit me and I realized the kids that are going to be showing up for us, they don't have any base. They have no foundation for what they can build on. And so I think that was a moment for me to realize we have to offer something that builds a base. That alone, if that's what they leave with, good on us, right? That's something. I'll never forget that moment. I didn't expect anyone to answer. I remember I was walking away and someone says, hello? Like, oh my gosh, someone's in this house.
Yeah.
So this is the group that you're working with. You described it earlier as you would say to schools, we want the worst of the worst student. We're the alternative, we're the safety net for the alternative school at the public level. But that means you have to do things differently. And you just said that's the moment, that situation you described. It's a moment you realize you have to give them something to show up for that's different than just you can get a diploma. So what does that involve now? I mean, you have a staff of 3 people. What does that look like functionally? What are you doing that is maybe outside of the norm?
Yeah, I think it starts with the teacher's mindset going into it. It's so easy for teachers, for volunteers to have this like Messiah complex where like, I'm here to save this student. And students and people, we can all sniff that out really quickly. And none of us want to be a project. Our students don't want to be a project, you know? So we work a lot on where's our curiosity at? We need to come in with an attitude of curiosity and just passionate about getting to know our students, every one of them, knowing what's going on in their life. Every student feels seen, heard. They're experienced by another adult while they're in there. And that's difficult with the type of students we get. We have most of our students, if you met them, they would drive you crazy. I mean, they're annoying, they're loud, if you say go this way, they want to go this way. They're just opposite of everything you want them to do. And so we're having to correct and discipline a lot. But how do you make a student feel loved through that discipline process? And that's what's tricky. And so that's how we do things different is so approaching that.
What is, you've talked about curiosity. What does a curiosity sound like? I can think I think the short version, we think curious, I need to ask questions, but that's not necessarily curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
When you say you have had to learn and your teams had to learn, we have to be curious about the student. What does that sound like? What are some curious questions that you are, or questions you're asking that you would say are curious questions?
Yeah. The first is like how you handle discipline, right? Like the easiest thing for me to do is students acting up, going crazy. Hey, stop doing that. Right. That's the easiest thing I can do. And that student's heard that a billion times in their life.
Right.
It doesn't even faze them. So to me, the curious thing then is, all right, this dude's acting crazy. Hey, do you want to go get a Polar Pop?
Mm-hmm.
And let's go hop in a car, or let's take a walk and go get a Polar Pop. And that's way more curious than stop doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can get them, or if I can say, hey, you want to go shoot some baskets in the gym? Do you want to go color on this coloring book that we have together?
Yeah.
Let's go do that. Hey, do you want to go work on our guitar together? Like those things are way more curious. And because if I just say, hey, what's going on at home? They're not going to just jump out in the middle of them acting out and go, oh, yeah, my dad came home drunk last night. I'm glad you asked. Right? That's not going to come out right away.
Right.
It's going to be a process of walking and talking and spending time and again, letting them know that they're not a project. I'm here with them.
It's interesting to think about it in terms of you first are taking an action that creates an opportunity for curiosity.
Yeah.
And assigning that as curious. Right. I've never really thought about it that way, but just saying, hey, you want to take a walk with me? Mm-hmm. You want to jump in here and color for a minute? Which sounds absurd, but yeah, I understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is step one to being curious. Because you're saying the defenses go up if you just say, hey, what's going on that you're not saying?
Yeah.
Or what happened at home or whatever. They're not going to tell you. Okay. What else is unique? I know you guys do trips, but a lot of schools do trips. But what does that look like? How does it fit in? And you know what? Before we talk about the trips, let's talk about the day. Mm-hmm. I know when we started, we were doing a thing called family time. Mm-hmm. Is that still happening? What does it look like? What's its purpose?
Yeah, so we do family time 2 days a week. And the purpose of it is just to get students talking about how they feel about things. We notice that our students they're not sitting around the table. They're not talking a lot about life with adults or even with their friends. They spend most of their time just trying to cover up their thoughts or their feelings. Right. And so we want to activate that through family time. And so a teacher will be in charge of a day. It's not a sermon. They instead have questions that they're trying to lead the conversation down a path by asking the right questions. And it's a safe place for students where they're not told they're wrong or anything like that. But we find it extremely important. Number one, just to help clear up thoughts and learn to express feelings, that kind of thing. But it's also teachers are doing the same thing. And so we're hearing each other's worldview or perspectives, and that's been really good. But it's also like, it's literally family time. So there's times where it's like, yeah, let's just play a game today. Or let's just go walk around campus and we go for a walk. And there's nothing intentional there, but just good conversation and kind of just experiencing a little bit of family within the school.
There's a statistic that I think is shocking. That 75% of those incarcerated don't have a high school diploma. And I think when you start working backwards from that statistic and you understand that 85% of those incarcerated don't have a father.
Yeah.
You start putting those things together, and then you start to see the value behind family time.
Yep.
Right? Because there is no family to have family time with.
Yeah.
And in some ways, sounds like you're bridging a gap with even the way you structure that.
Yep.
How much time does family time absorb? You're doing half days. How much of that is family time?
About 30 minutes.
Okay.
Yep. 2 days a week.
What do you think that the success rate of your students would be without that? I'm asking you to speculate.
Yeah. I think, there's a reason we've been doing it all these years, right? We used to do it every day, and we've cut it back because we've found value in PE and students moving their body. And it's kind of like a modified family time, right? Doing PE. So everyone's got to participate. It's not just for credit. But just having that camaraderie, setting school books aside and just talking about life. I think it's what makes us different.
Sure.
It's they feel valued, and they're growing in ways that school books can't help us grow in. And I think that leads to better productivity academically.
Yeah, I would imagine that the physical activity is leading to better conversations in your family time as well. Yeah. What do you have an example? I mean, someone who's listening who maybe can create this in their environment. What's an example of some family time discussion? Like what's a topic and maybe a couple questions you might ask to get it going?
The best thing is just to go the controversial road, right? Like, so the easy one, like if you want to get a good conversation going, is like talk about forgiveness, right? Like say, is there times that we should not forgive people? And all the students say, oh yeah, I'll never forgive my dad. I'll never forgive this bully, or I'll never forgive this ex-friend I had. And start challenging them on that and the power of forgiveness. So just asking them questions like, why do you think you're punishing them by not forgiving? Who's actually losing if you're not forgiving? Like start really pressing into, and then start talking about the freedom that comes with forgiveness and what that could look like. And so just really like those types of subjects where it's like, this is really foreign to me, this idea of forgiveness. If you start pressing in, start asking tough questions about that, it gets the students going pretty good. And you can kind of get them some quick aha moments that are fun.
Yeah, there's got to be, at some point, there's got to be some cognitive dissonance. Yeah. They wouldn't describe it that way, obviously.
Yeah.
But at some point, going, wait a second, that's not what I've always thought.
Yep.
Or that's when somebody acts that way towards me, I view it as wrong. But when describing it, I would say it's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's those are interesting moments. Do you ever hit political topics?
Yeah, I mean, we won't address like right away. Like, hey, what do you guys think about Trump? You know, we won't hit it head on.
Safe bet to avoid those.
Yes, yeah, we avoid that stuff. But we'll hit moral issues. You know, that kind of that teeter.
So more of the social politics.
Yeah,
by subject, not political party.
Yep.
Yeah, I can see those getting really interesting.
Yeah.
Do you find as they engage that they're informed about their opinions, or they're just opinionated?
That's the hard part, is they get all their opinions from like TikTok and Instagram, right? And so they think they've got all these facts, or like, no, that's just a guy with an account trying to get views. You know, like that's not actually a really good source. And so like trying to carving through that stuff, or so many of them will hold on to like this idea of karma, or, you know, these things that are kind of out there in our imagination. But this is truth to them. And so like carving through that stuff can be tricky.
Yeah. I think for the educators listening, if you're really paying attention to what you're talking about, family time can initially sound like a waste of time.
Yeah.
Right. We could be doing this reading exercise. You said you've got a student now who can barely read.
Yeah.
And someone listening is going, why aren't you using that time to do this? But when you think about what you just described, it's hard to create and grow in critical thinking if my thought pattern is never really challenged.
Yeah.
And I think even in family time, barring the social element that you're bringing and the ability to almost give them autonomy in their thoughts and freedom to engage, you're creating a space where critical inquiry is being developed in them. And that is a lost art in our society.
Yeah.
I mean, we just take information as law right now. It's like, oh, that absolutely is a fact.
Yeah. And
that's true about a lot of folks. And we won't get into why maybe that's the case. But I think it's a really cool thing that is got to be, if you just took the rest of it off, that has a real value in and of itself.
Yeah. And if you think that's a waste of time, we do a trip every other Friday.
Every other Friday.
All right, let's talk about that. Yeah, we don't even have school every other Friday.
Where are we going?
Yeah, anywhere. We think there's a lot of value in experiential learning.
Yeah.
There's, like I said, I want to hand a student a diploma, and to do that, you need to get 40 credits in these subjects. But I think there's a lot you can learn from going ice skating in Indianapolis too. And so we try to do trips every other Friday. It's everything from ice skating to we're baking cookies at a volunteer's house to going to a basketball game, going to Chicago to just walk around Chicago. Everything. We do 4 days in Red River Gorge, Kentucky, doing hiking.
Awesome.
And we just think that there's a lot of value in getting outside of your community, experiencing something new.
How does a student get the opportunity to do that?
So every student has to do at least one trip per quarter. Okay. And so you have to sign up for one. And then we usually have space for students to go on multiple. We have students that go on every trip. Okay. And so, Yeah, they just sign up. There's a lot of times where we'll say, hey, this would be really good for you if you went on this trip, and we're really trying to encourage them to go, because a lot of times they want to stay in their comfort zone. Like, oh, I've never been ice skating before. It's like, yeah, either has this guy either, but we're just going to go and fall and have a good time together.
Yeah. So what about a group of students are going on a trip? The other students that aren't going, what's their every other Friday? Are they home? What's happening there?
Yeah, we do it a couple different ways. If it's a big trip where a lot of us are going, a majority of the school's going, then we'll do e-learning for the students. So the students who aren't going for whatever reason have to work from home and get a certain amount of things done from their computer at home. Or if it's a smaller trip, 2 staff will stay, 2 staff will go. And so we just have school as normal for the other students.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about some creative interventions. I mean, I know there's so much when you talk about the demographic, right? And I try to qualify that by the one recruiting experience, right? Mm-hmm. Where someone's living in a home that should be condemned, probably burnt down, honestly. That's the group you're working with, and not all of them, right? But a large majority of them are coming from really rough circumstances. What are some things you've had as a team across 13 years that you've had to engage to help a student you never thought you would?
Yeah, and that's kind of the tricky part, honestly. There was a stretch where I was getting too involved in the students' lives, and it was like, it was draining my own life. And I would come home and I felt disconnected from my family because I was just so emotionally invested in these situations these kids were in, to where like I was just feeling guilty all the time. Like, just thinking, man, I know what this kid's going through right now at home, and I'm chilling with my family, watching Seinfeld, having a good time. And I couldn't disconnect from it. And so there's trying to find a balance there. But when you have each other's phone numbers, there's a certain access that you get. And so if I'm talking with a student, I know they have a rough home life, or I know they're going home and they've been fighting with their mom a lot. Mm-hmm. And I challenge them to live in more grace. So we get out of school at 4:00. I might text a student at 6:00, this kid I'm talking about, say, hey, I hope you're showing mom some grace today. Let me know how it's going. And so you can have that kind of little dialogue, and they feel more like a person then, in that, as opposed to just one of my students, one of my clients, you know?
Yeah.
But that escalates, right? And we had a student that moved in with one of our teachers, a few months ago, and
what?
Yeah.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
We got to dose this a little bit.
Yeah.
First of all, it's abnormal for a teacher to have a student. In fact, it's wildly inappropriate in most settings.
Yeah.
In this setting, what structures, how do you protect against that side of it, right? Because I know there's some people listening going, never.
Right.
Never.
And I wouldn't encourage it for everyone. We can do it because we're small. And I'm so hands-on with all the teachers, all the students. If something's getting inappropriate, I can sniff it out pretty quickly. And we've had that happen. Not that there's anything sexual going on or anything like that, but I just saw some boundaries kind of getting crossed, and it was something that I was addressing. And so we could kind of monitor that with each other. And there's never, because we're small enough, there's never like this isolated relationship between a teacher and a student that's not involved with another teacher.
Okay.
Right. So in a bigger school, you can kind of hide and have this relationship that no one else is a part of. But at Kinwell, we're all in this room together. And so there's never an isolated relationship. We're all kind of tied together.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And so it creates kind of the safety net of accountability with each other.
Is there some sort of, like gender assignment here? Is it like do you have female team members?
Yep.
Is female team members primarily, if they're exchanging numbers, is it with female students? Is that kind of is that part of it?
For the most part, there's definitely some overlap. And there's times where a male student connects better with a female student and vice versa. We definitely have to treat that differently.
Sure.
And it can't be as intimate as the same sex would be.
Yeah.
But like especially for education, like when I mentioned those e-learning days, there's a time where the teacher's texting all the students and letting them know, and that kind of thing. But there's a lot of safety and measures put in place where we all have this open dialogue about what's going on. And there's been times where a teacher or a student has said some inappropriate things to a female teacher. It's like, all right, you're cut off. You no longer have access to this teacher.
Yeah.
And again, nothing sexual, but just you can tell where something's going, or a student's feeling too comfortable in that relationship. And
I think a lot of times trying to lean into how you lead humans is trying to meet, because every human, although has baseline needs that are the same, every human is unique as well.
Yep.
Trying to lean into those specific needs definitely requires access.
Yep.
And you're not going to get them in their email.
Yep. Right.
I mean, there's statistics say 45% of students, college students, actually read their email.
Yeah.
Only 45%.
Yeah.
Put that in high school, it's even less. Put it in this demographic, it's basically zero. Right? So I get it. I get the motivation. I just know that there's a lot of reluctance because it requires extra of me to watch those and guard those things. And it sounds like that's something you're saying that's an acceptable risk because I'm willing to do the work to hold people accountable and have the hard conversations if needed.
Yep.
But you said another thing that probably made a lot of people breathe deep. That you have recently had the need where a student needed to live with a teacher for, I assume, just a period of time.
Yeah.
What did that look like, and how do you safeguard in that situation?
Yeah, the teacher came to me and with tears in her eyes, just said, I want this student to move in. I've gotten to know the home life of this student, and it's not healthy. And for either people, for the parent and the student, it just wasn't healthy, and they needed a reset. And it was two female students. They had gotten really close with each other, and so we met and said, this is what this can look like. And so she moved in, and I helped the teacher kind of create some rules and expectations for the student. Because again, it could feel like, oh, I'm here to save this student. But if the student's not wanting to change their life, this move-in experience isn't going to go well. And so there were some parameters of like, these are the growth points that this student needs to have for this to work out. And we met with the parent. The parent was on board with it and said, yeah, let's give this a try. And the student was 17 years old, so older student, but not quite old enough to move out and go down that road. And so we needed some guidance there. And so, yeah, it went well for a few months. The student started kind of breaking some rules, and actually the teacher kind of cut it off and said, yeah, I think this isn't going to work anymore. And so,
wow. I mean, you talk about going the extra mile.
Yeah.
For a student. And, I've got story after story of my own, but it's higher education. It's completely different context. But I think there is something really interesting and beautiful about that where you're saying this is going to be a part of our culture, that working here requires you to have this willingness to go beyond that which is comfortable.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you have to sign a sheet saying I'm willing to let someone live with me. That's not what I mean.
Right.
And I know you're not doing that.
Yep.
But there is a baseline says that this is who we are and this is who we're working with, and normal doesn't work here.
Yep. And
so you've got to do something different. And that's risky.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're willing to do the extra.
I am, because I think if we're going to call ourselves a family, then there's no, like, our families, you and I, we don't have rule books for our families, right? There's no, this is the child code of conduct, this is the parent code of conduct. We don't have those things.
True.
We're just a family.
Yeah.
And that's what we do at our school. I've had staff in the past that have wanted, hey, I want to have a student handbook, or this is our protocol handbook. And I just refuse to do it. I'm not going to be confined to this black and white issue when every student has something different going on. There's times I catch a student with a vape that I kick them out. I might catch another student with weed and I take them out to lunch. Right?
Yeah.
I want to be able to do something different for every student and treat each student individually and each problem individually. And it's a lot more work. It's a lot more stress. It's a lot more emotional wear and tear, but I think each student deserves that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's easier and safer to have a rule book, and these are the guidelines that we follow. But I think if we're really going to be a family, we're going to have to get a little dirty then.
Mm-hmm. Well, so let's as we wrap up here, let's jump off of that a little bit, because say I'm a public teacher listening, and I want to be more attentive to the human side of this. But they're in a system that is student handbook, employee code of conduct. What's something practical that they can apply tomorrow that allows them to be more in that lane, right? That I'm going to be human and looking at a human versus, the source of all knowledge and the student who just needs to listen. What's something practical they could apply right now, even if they're in a system that doesn't necessarily foster all the things that you're doing?
I think when you talk about education as a whole, right, there's a huge issue with burnout and teachers wanting to quit, and there's a big revolving door with education right now. And I think the thing that's pushing us that is our difficult students are pushing us closer to burnout, and we want to distance ourselves from the most difficult students as much as we can. And if we're honest with ourselves, that period that we know, fourth period, so-and-so is in here, oh man, this is going to be tough. And that's the mentality that we have. If we kind of flip that mentality and, okay, this student's coming in, I have them for 50 minutes and they're going to want to disrupt my class. They know they're going to disrupt the class. They know exactly how the day is going to go, right? If we kind of flip it and that student comes in and your mission is, I want to get to know something new about this kid today. I want this kid to have a different perspective when he comes in tomorrow. And yeah, inside you might think this kid doesn't deserve this. He doesn't deserve this extra grace or this extra love. I want him to feel punished. Yeah, we might have those feelings, but you're going to keep doing the same thing then. And instead, let's do it a little bit differently and lean into that student as much as we can. We naturally want to gravitate to the easy students, the one who get all the A's and do what they're supposed to do, right? And those students deserve attention too. They're doing the right thing. But if we can at least match that with our most difficult students, I think that would alleviate a lot of the burnout that we're experiencing.
Yeah, I love that. Change. Someone said, I can't change you, but I can change me.
Yeah.
And that will influence change in you.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I hear you saying when you say flip the script. And I think that's really beautiful. I would add to that encouragement to say, you're going to have those thoughts is that they don't want you to care about them.
Yeah.
That's a lie.
Right.
They do.
Yep.
And in part, they're being difficult and they're pushing away because that makes them uncomfortable. To want something that most likely in their life they've had and it's been ripped away. And they've decided at some point, I'm never doing that again.
Yeah.
But being persistent and staying at it, makes a difference.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited about our next episode. You've got a student is going to join us, and that's always going to be interesting. But I'm looking forward to that, and we get to learn a little bit more about what Kinwell's doing. But thank you for joining me, and thanks for a little bit of a walk down memory lane.
Yeah.
Some good times. We left a lot out. We need a lot more episodes to tell those stories. But love what you're doing. I talk about you and the school on a regular basis, especially with my clients that are in the same lane. So thank you for what you're doing. I know it's not easy. It's amazing that you've been doing this for 13 years. So kudos to you.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Adam.
Yep.
Thanks for joining us here at the Leading Adam podcast. We hope you found inspiration and hope to see you again next time. Leave us a comment on YouTube, or if you have an idea for a future episode, let us know that too. You can connect with us at 240solutions.com. Thanks, and we hope to see you again next time.